All right, good morning and welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
And today, Rohi, we have another episode on Homeownership Pride as we continue to provide you updates in our city and or local updates. We always like to talk about topics that I think are important to our community. You know, a lot of the times I go on through some of the threads that are going through, whether it's next door neighbor, or you go through other Facebook's posts that are going on, and it's always something about Madera, something about Madera. Last week, I think it was about our downtown, so I must have heard so many comments on there as far as the State Route project. But today, we wanted to focus on homeownership pride, Rohi, and maybe you can give us a little bit of highlight on what to expect in today's show.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good transition when we talk about, you know, going from a citywide improvement now down to our local neighborhoods and, you know, just understanding, you know, in your own neighborhood, the different, kind of the different levels of what can kind of happen if to a neighborhood that has strong neighborhood pride and is maintaining their neighborhood either through, you know, maybe a forced side like HOAs, but, you know, also outside of an HOA, just maintaining your lawns versus letting one that just kind of slowly go. And, you know, you kind of visited one of those communities you said, you know, not too long ago. And just to kind of see again what that does to a community and how quick, you know, maybe that community can start to dissolve and maybe someday turn into the slums, even though it one day was beautiful,
The
brand
pride of
new.
the community,
Exactly.
right? Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
So,
You
yeah.
know, it's funny. I'm not from Madera, but I did have some friends that would talk about these apartments over at the over on Madera Avenue, and I remember them saying when those apartments were built, they were some of the nicest, cleanest apartments that people wanted to be close to that area.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny because I came here in 2005, right? So I know little, but I'm learning about Madera and some of the history. But I know there was areas even behind us here off of you know, Howard. Anything that's north of Howard was a very well-established community as well back in the 60s and 70s, right? But as time, you know, everything has wear and tear. People tend to move out, and they may not maintain the homes at the level that were maintained back then. So then you start seeing this argument about community pride, right?
Yeah.
Where is your homeownership pride? Where is the upkeeping of your lawns? And I get a developer always on my butt saying, "Hey, I developed these subdivisions, and I take pride in them. But if you go outside of that, you know, it's very hard. People need to realize that this can certainly impact their values, especially when you come to resell or, you know, desirable areas to live in, right?"
Yeah, and that's what's difficult about, you know, when you look at neighborhoods is, you know, again, outside of an HOA environment, you don't get to decide your neighbor. I mean, you do when you buy your house, but if you live there long enough and that person next door moves out, you don't get to pick who buys the house. I mean, it's not like a governing system that's, you know, where the neighborhood votes to say yes or no if you can come in. It's, you get what you get. And, you know, with that is, to your point, I mean, if you have somebody that is, you know, maybe especially the financial situation I think most people are in, they're kind of barely scraping by to pay that house payment. Oh, now you have lawn care and you have the day-to-day upkeep. And by the way, it's not just single family. There's now 2 or 3 families. So that wear and tear, like you're saying, is maybe happening a little faster, you know, and it's tough because, you know, if you're a neighbor sitting there staring at that happen, I think a lot of times you just feel helpless, you know. And I know at the city level, I mean, we get sometimes those complaints about, you know, how can code enforcement go out there and kind of start remedying things, but, you know, you want to look at other ways to maybe nip that in the bud before it has to go to that level. You know?
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, like I said, when I first came into Madera, I think this was early 2001. I hadn't moved to Madera, but I came to visit Madera for a job interview, and then I got a job off of Road 26, Club Drive. But that's pretty much all I knew. I was coming off the freeway southbound, got off on 17, and went to my destination to work there for a mortgage company. And in doing so, I thought Madera of just that, what I saw on Club Drive, right? And at that time, that was still county. Well, most of it's county.
Yeah.
Up until you hit the city limits when you're past Vallarta and Tractor Supply, right? But if you notice the rural area, it was still somewhat rural, right? And I figured, okay, Madera is no different than, you know, other rural areas, but I hadn't visited the city itself. So then I had the opportunity to go down Schnorr, and I found that to be a very pleasing drive because it was such a nice, beautiful homes that were shaping that street. And the further south I got into Schnorr, prior to hitting Howard, I saw these bigger homes, and I said, wow, these homes are well kept. And that's what drew me to Madera. That was the impact that I had on Madera when I saw Schnorr. I go, wait a minute, Madera isn't what I thought it would be because I only saw a certain segment of it. But now as I come down Schnorr, I'm actually getting a glimpse of what Madera really is and what homeownership pride is.
Yeah.
And that also, you know, it also led me to Granada. Again, I didn't know Madera, but I saw Granada and wow, it's a lot of the same things that's taking place. And at that time, I think a lot of development was taking place. It was shaping up, right? You had a lot of homes coming up. But those areas certainly grasped my attention.
Yeah.
And I said, this is awesome. And neighborhoods like that is what really gives community pride, right?
Yeah.
It gives you community, it's a community asset, so to speak, because it gives it value and people desirability, whether they're HOAs. Again, I didn't know Montecito Park at the time.
Yeah.
But even visiting Montecito Park for the first time, I was like, wow. I mean, there's a reason why that HOA exists, whether it's Montecito Park, whether it's the Seasons Court, whether it's Point West, all these areas that have particular HOAs, I mean, there's enforcement, right? There's a component in there, and that's what keeps that homeowner proud, and it says, you know, well, I'm having to pay for it to keep it this way.
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, I think the important aspect is that I think when homeowners today, and you know it more because you obviously that's your realm, but I feel like as a homeowner, we're misguided by thinking the next new community is where I have to move to get that. And to your point, it's no. I mean, they like the houses you're talking about, like on Schnorr and Granada. I mean, these are old homes. I mean, these are, I don't know, probably what, 80s at least, if not, you know, maybe early 80s. Because I know, I've lived in that area my whole life, and I know, you know, when we got a house out there, you know, I was definitely probably 4 or 5. So I mean, it's got to be early 80s that those homes were built, and those communities are still, for the most part, you know, beautiful, if as you want to say, you know, where you can take a newer community that's probably been built since that time, but did not have probably that community pride and is already slipping down into, you know, I don't want to say the ghetto kind of feel, but it is. I mean, because, and again, it's just because the type of people, just because it was new doesn't mean you're going to get that home pride that I'm going to take care of my lawn and the trees and, you know, make sure all the cars park correctly and not on the grass and, you know.
I will tell you this, that there are certain neighborhoods, older neighborhoods, like you stated, maybe 70s, 80s, that are still well kept, bigger, larger homes than these newer subdivisions. And folks that are still there, whether they're your boomers or the silent generation, if any, you know, they really have pride in their homes. And again, they may have purchased these homes maybe at a lesser value, but again, money back then was no different than it is today. Inflation today, obviously, you're going to pay more dollars for that same home. But in taking that money back in those days, I think it was no different. You still had to fork out money, get a loan, maintain. And now I feel that as prices continue to go up, I think for some folks, that's not that need to upkeep is not survival anymore. It's more like I need to provide shelter, provide food, and make sure that I can continue. I can make ends meet at the end of the month. And if I'm going to mow my lawn, it'll probably be every other week, or I'll do it whenever someone tells me, "Hey, your lawn's not looking good," right? And you think about today's rat race, and you see a lot of folks, especially married couples that both have jobs and both have to be out there
Yeah.
bustling and hustle and bustle, right? But at the same time, do they make time for the upkeep of their home, right?
Yeah, and that's you look at like that one aspect, like you said, just the lawn, just that square piece of what, maybe 500 square foot of grass, right? And you think, okay, the watering that goes into it, if you mow it every week, if you don't, and you get a gardener, now you're maybe maybe a couple $100 a month to have that gardener come and do it for you. And to your point, you start looking at it and go like, well, I got to eat. I don't really need a green grass. I don't need to fertilize it. I don't need to put fresh seed every season change. And, again, that it's those little things that start eating away slowly. And I think a lot of that too is society nowadays. We don't have, it's probably just mostly because the old school shows you would watch from like the 60s and 50s and stuff, where dad was kind of like always the maintenance man of the house, right? There's a doorknob he fixed, he fixed it. You need to be painted, he painted it. Where today it's always about hiring a service. Like, who do you know that can come paint my house? Who do you know that can come fix that doorknob? And that just adds to the cost. Because,
And do I have the money to?
Yeah, but and like I'm saying, like if your light switch is out, I mean, we had that at my house. I'm still fully capable. I went and bought the light switch down at Lowe's, and I switched it out. But thinking how, like, in some households, people just don't feel comfortable with the basic knowledge. So they're thinking like, well, I had to hire an electrician. That's probably going to be like a $200 light switch. We'll just leave it. Just know when you touch it, don't shock yourself, because
put a tape across it.
Yeah, so that's where I feel like it's not just home ownership and pride. It goes with just people also taking the time to I guess not be scared to master some of these skills. Like, it's not hard to mow your lawn, but to some people it's work. I mean, look, we're kind of a lazy society, right? I mean, I got to go out in 110-degree weather and push a lawnmower and get all smelling of grass just to make who happy? You?
Yeah.
My neighbor? I don't care. So
Yeah. No, and I appreciate those words, because believe it or not, really, I think when people don't, the psychology behind the visual cues that we see, right? Like, for example, if I go through a neighborhood that looks like it's cared for, then that has a value, collective value, because
Oh, yeah.
what it does is that your neighbors, and they feel like this community pride that, hey, my home is cared for next to the homes that are cared for as well.
Yeah.
So we have a collective pride going on here, and we want to make sure we upkeep, right? And I know sometimes it's hard for some folks, right? I mean, obviously, as people age, and
Yeah.
maybe they don't have the ability to get out there and keep their home or maintain their home, then that's where you start seeing the deterioration of those homes,
Yeah.
right? And you'll see it more often. I brought up a picture here of what is ideal, right? Of a community that's ideal, and you don't really see any cars that are parked alongside the road there, right? Everything's either in a garage, or maybe everybody's at work, right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I mean, this is what an ideal picture would look like of a home, of home ownership, right? Of how these homes should be, right? But I realistically, we live in a society now where, we have, maybe a 3-bedroom where there's six family, a household of 6, and that's going to be tough, because if you have 4 kids and they're of age, and it's getting harder for them to go out and purchase a home of their own,
Yeah.
then you're going to have that times whatever amount of cars are going to be out there. And sometimes those cars stack up around the streets. And I know people don't like to see that, but I've seen newer neighborhoods, and that problem continues to persist. It's not leaving. It's not, it's not saying they don't have kids. I'm just saying the homes that are built today are in smaller lots, and sometimes they just don't accommodate for the family size of 5, 6, or 7,
Yeah.
right? But
Well, maybe with
maybe
Madera's
one-
new transportation system that comes and picks you up like an Uber.
Yeah. So that begs the question,
Yeah.
right? Is it a transportation issue?
Yeah.
Should we provide more transit or more active transportation where maybe you don't need to have that many
Yeah.
cars? But we live again in a rural community
Yeah.
where we still have to drive and commute to work, and sometimes a lot further than most would in these urban areas.
Yeah. Well, and I think again, it just has to do with priorities, and I know we've talked about that a lot. I mean, like to your point, is those homes that have 5 and 6 cars, you know, that car payment and the insurance and the gas and everything on that one car could probably go a long way towards that house maintenance that they're doing. But Americans in general, we love our cars, and we don't have one car. We usually have more cars to people living in the house, you know. But it just, I don't know. It gets down to, and I don't know if it's again, it's a societal change, but it used to be, you know, keeping up with the Joneses is, I'm going to do my lawn, and then my neighbor's jealous of my lawn, so they're going to outdo my lawn. And basically, I think we had a period of time in the old days of like kind of this building up mentality. Like the keeping up the Joneses was not necessarily, I think it got demonized to some degree of like, oh, he bought a new car, I got to buy a new car. He bought this. It was more like again, kind of that community pride of like, he's keeping his place nice, I need to keep my place nice, you know? And I think that's kind of what was lost in that translation, and it got demonized. And especially, you know, if you're, you know, part of the church, you're Christian, whatever, you're kind of taught like, don't keep up with the Joneses. Like, it's not about like, you know, wanting what your neighbor has. Well, yeah, it is when it comes to maybe stuff, but there's still got to be that sense of like you said, of community pride of like, hey, everybody else's house looks nice and mine looks like trash, I should probably fix it. You know, that's, I think, where like we got to you know, coin that phrase to come up with something new that says it's not about he bought a new car, you need a new car. It's, hey, you know, this is kind of the minimum you should be doing in society, you know?
And I think we've become so individual with ourselves that we forget about the collective. You know, we've been taught that that you do for yourself, you fend for yourself. But in communities, I mean, hence the word community, right? These are neighborhoods. And in communities, it's collective. And I think, you know, if one home deteriorates, then it's like saying I have this apple in a bad apple in a barrel, right? Essentially, it's contagious, right? The effect will start spreading to where essentially, well, then my neighbor says, well, you know what? I'm going to do the same. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you only have 2 homes in that community that are really doing a good job. But now, visually, you'll be looking at that community and say, well, I don't know if I want to move here. I don't know if I want to pay that price for that particular home. And again, it has an impact. It's a financial impact. It has 2 different impacts, right? Psychological impact for those that are viewing it, and then again, what they assume is taking place there. They may see, well, because you don't take care of it, therefore I believe it's a poorer community, therefore I believe it's more high in crime, I believe, you know, and it just, it scares people away. And again, it reduces value because again, desirability is what drives demand a lot of the times, right? And sometimes it's survival, but you know, I believe that homeownership pride, bare minimum, you should at least, you know, maintain the front. The front of your home should be the bare minimum. What you do in the back, that's fine, but it's just that curb appeal, right? You want to make sure, hey, you know, I remember there was a time where we had this issue with water conservation, and people were painting their grass green, right? And, I mean, hey, you frown upon that if they're making an effort to try to make their homes look good. But it's just that you know, this was demanded by not only the state but also by our cities to conserve water, and then we had these tiers that were really escalating the water rate. So anyhow.
Yeah. Well, and again, the ownership is what's also difficult, is because again, when you look at some of these communities, it might have started as a predominantly homeowner-based community, and as those homeowners have moved again to their newer home and maybe left it as a rental, you know, now you got a whole different dynamic of the rental community coming in, and you know, certain areas of town that are high rental, I think you see an even faster escalation of that downward spiral, because again, a renter has even less incentive to keep that home looking good, and the homeowner's only going to put as much in as he can make sure that the rent and the mortgage and everything makes sense to kind of cover the bills and maybe even make a little bit on top of that. So he's not going to come in and put that, you know, pretty lawn every season. So that dynamic as well, it's asking a lot again of a renter, and maybe that's a good renter that says, hey, even though it's not my home, I still live here. I want to keep it up, and I think even those are hard to find nowadays.
Yeah. And maybe something that obviously we got to lead by example, right?
Sure.
Obviously we sit.
I'll go mow my lawn today.
Yeah,
Jose. Okay,
right.
I'm sorry.
No, of course, and everybody has a different situation economically and what have you, and I know that it's a struggle, especially with today's economy.
Yeah.
Some people are doing good, but others are not. And for those that are not, you've seen these videos that I see when someone comes up to their home and says, "Hey, can I do your lawn for free?"
Yeah.
Not only they're trying to get promotion. I wish we had more of those people that would want to do that in communities. But again, you don't want to take advantage of that, because the one time they're helping you is to try to make sure, give your home that appeal that it deserves, because a home nicely trimmed and nicely mowed, I don't know, it just pops out.
Yeah.
When I first bought my first home, Rohim, I was young, and I bought it in Merced, and I wanted to do all these things to my home. But I knew that I only had a certain amount of budget, so I started off slow. I started off with the siding because there was some dry rot, and then I knew that essentially I needed a roof. So then I went to the roof, and then I looked at my backyard, and through friends, they gave me some sod, and grass, and I put it back there, and I patched it up. But essentially over the years, it filled in really well. And my backyard looked really nice. My front yard, I try to keep up with it, up until my wife would tell me, "Hey, are you thinking of mowing the lawn?" But we were distracted with our works and what have you in everyday life. But there was something about when you did the weed eating and you did the trimming, that after it was done and it was all squared, there's something in my head. Maybe the high functioning ADHD in me said, that looks good. Now I have to get it done in a certain way. But just the relief of knowing that I did that made me feel good. It made me feel good for that moment, right? And then obviously grass grows like hair, right?
Yeah.
You have to continuously maintain it, and in order to have that shape, you have to be out there at least once a week, or no more than 2 weeks, right? But, otherwise, it gets really bushy, and then all of a sudden you have all these weeds coming out, and if you don't maintain them, then that's where shit hits the fan, right?
Well, that's why you adopt the desert landscape as the right term for around here. Low water, low maintenance,
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity, I guess I'm not saying, maybe in a way where the city did offer some incentive to go with a dry landscape and or artificial turf, although it wasn't as much as I tried to maintain the front of my lawn. There were spots there during the summer that just, no matter how much water I added, because it was crowned, it just would continue to stay bare. And I said, the little small investment with their incentive, I left it like that. And now, I don't have to worry about the front. I worry about my back. But again, it's not a sore sight for someone that's coming through my neighborhood and seeing, hey, that's our council member's house, man. That guy doesn't even keep up at his house. But it's certainly something that we all want to consider. And Roy, as we kind of wrap this up, kind of give us some examples of what we can do, especially in our neighborhoods. I know if money's tight, is that an excuse for us not to keep our home?
No, and I think if money's tight, I think it's safe to identify, almost like a budget, but like, what are the things in my yard? How much time does it take? And like, to your point, if that bush, every couple of weeks you got to go shave it and you don't really feel up to it, pull the bush, or if you don't want to keep mowing that lawn, look at other alternatives, like maybe shrinking the amount of grass you have, or and some of those things they're fairly inexpensive, and you can do it yourself. That's the one thing when it comes to lawn care. I don't think it takes a lot of experience to do a lot of that stuff, and I think just neighbors have to get brave to the fact, if you don't want to go buy a lawnmower today, go ask your neighbor. That's part of the neighborhood thing, is to say, hey, look, I don't really have one. Can I borrow yours? I don't feel up to, getting my own, because I'm only going to mow it maybe once or twice. But I think it's small baby steps that you can do to get to where your yard is maintainable, hopefully by yourself, and within your budget, you know what I mean? And to your point, I mean, California is low on water, so look at things that can reduce your water needs. That's going to save you money. Look at the incentives that are out there, because there are definitely a lot of programs that either repay you to replace your grass, or you know, some of these other water conserving aspects that, again, it's free money from the government. I mean, it's not your money, but it's free. So I think it's good to do that. And then as a neighbor, maybe you have that lawnmower and the time and the energy. Go help a neighbor out. I mean, why are we so scared today to go talk to our neighbor and see somebody struggling and say, how can I help you? I'm not going to come every month, and maybe you got to come help me a little bit to kind of have some buy-in, but how can I be a good neighbor and help you out to kind of get maybe that ball rolling?
Yeah, and you know, that's a good point there, Roy, because when we do these neighborhood watch meetings that we do, you know, you don't want to offend anyone in that community, but you do want to encourage them to, hey, this is why these neighborhood watch meetings are held, is so that you get to know who your neighbors are.
Yeah.
And I mean, you don't really know their situation until you ask, right? And a lot of times, that's I guess that's the key is be proactive. You know, get out there and talk to your neighbors and find out. I mean, if there's something you can do, because I do drive by certain sectors of my neighborhood, and you know, there are times that I feel like I wonder if I can just go in there. But again, you don't want to be invasive, and you don't want to go and hey, can I help you? And you don't know what their reaction may be. But again, this is because we've lost that sense of community, that sense of, you know, hey, let's know our neighbors. Let's understand who lives here. And quite frankly, if you go outside your house, do you know all your neighbors? You know, it's sad to say that nowadays it's, you know, maybe one or two neighbors on the right of you, left of you, but the rest of the neighborhood you don't.
Yeah.
And it's time for us to start engaging again. And the call to action that I would say would be, you know, pick a small improvement this week.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a weed eating, pulling out the weeds, you know, hey, you know what, this is getting a little bit long. Before code enforcement comes out and tells you something, maybe you can be proactive and say, you know, I'm going to take care of the weeds this week. So I hope we encouraged you. I mean, our purpose of our show is to try to provide you guys with really good topics, but at the same time, leave you with a good sense of encouragement. Right, Roy?
I do. I agree.
Anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, just remember it's gonna be hot out there. So if you do work out there, keep water nearby. You know.
Yeah, keep water nearby. Maybe early morning, late afternoons, or the weekends. You know, where you're not having to take on that stress. But yeah, with that, Rohi, thank you again for watching us. We ask that you continue to share, subscribe, and continue to make comments, and we'll go ahead and see if we can bring up good topics that you'd like for us to discuss. But with that, thank you again for